It is some people, unscrupulous people, who have managed to beat the system.
The rot deepens in the Forex scam after Bank of Baroda. The Enforcement Directorate names 9 more banks. Arrests the suspects for allegedly siphoning off over 500 crore rupees using the Oriental Bank of Commerce.
Whatever surplus we get or whatever resources we get, I think we'll try and spend them.
The Finance Minister makes a pledge to pump prime the economy, says the government will continue to spend to stimulate growth. Hints for the first time that the disinvestment target may not be met, but also shows indirect tax collections will beat estimates. That's a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. The regulator cracks the whip on call drops. Telcos will have to compensate customers, also issue standards for quality of service with the provision to penalize companies for violating the rules. Australia waves the green flag to the ADANI Group's $10 billion coal mine, imposes 36 conditions on the company. The ADANI stock rallies in trade. A major embarrassment for the CBI. The 2G Corp slams the agency for fabricating the charge sheet in the 2002 additional spectrum case, dismisses the case against former Telecom Secretary Shamal Ghosh and 3 telecom companies, including Bharti Airtel. Supreme Court extends the ambit of Aadhaar, allows the unique ID to be used voluntarily for NREGA, Jan-Dhan and pension schemes, but warns it cannot be made mandatory. After months of suspense, the Supreme Court will deliver its verdict on the constitutionality of the National Judicial Appointments Committee. All eyes on how this executive versus judiciary battle will pan out. Volkswagen recalls 8.5 million cars across Europe after Germany orders it to recall 2.4 million cars in the country. Italian authorities begin investigating the company's Italian operations in connection with the emission scandal. The world's largest component maker, Bosch, is not entirely buying the much-hyped India story just yet. An exclusive chat with the company's chairman from Stuttgart coming up.
Last maybe 130k.
The ball left. Edge, and it carries. Shahid Khan is the one who always does. Oh, that's a beauty, and gone. That's a beauty. Shahid just looking to get that ball back through the gate. Right. Close to cut. And inside edge, back onto the stump.
Well, he's arguably one of India's best ever fast bowlers. Zahir Khan has decided to call it quits as far as his international career is concerned. Will he be remembered for picking up crucial wickets in India's victorious World Cup campaign in 2011? Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. Hi, Nandara.
Hi, Shireen. Well, we should just thank Zahir Khan, as Dhoni called him, the Sachin Tendulkar of when it came to the bowling attack.
All right, from Zahir Khan on to the market action. Now, strong global cues lifted the sentiment today, and the bulls managed to regain some lost ground. Let's give you the breakup now. The Sensex is back above the 27,000 mark, gaining about 230 points today. The Nifty rallied nearly 1%, and it's getting closer to 8,200. Mid-caps marginally underperforming the blue chips as the index put on about 40 points. But let's take a look at the macro story. India's exports have witnessed one of the sharpest falls in the month of September, as overseas shipments during the month were down an annual 24.3%. So this is year on year. Exports stand now at $21.8 billion, down 24%. Imports also fell sharply in the month of September, coming in at $32.3 billion, which is a dip of 25%. That again is on a year on year basis. Trade deficit stood at a manageable 10.5 billion. The fall in imports was primarily due to a 54.5% dip in crude oil imports, which stood at just 6.6 billion in September. Non-oil imports, that's capital goods and inputs for the manufacturing sector, also fell during the month. by 10.6%, coming in at 25.7 billion. So that's the latest on the trade deficit front. But on to the top story that broke right here on CNBC TV 18. The Enforcement Directorate has busted another module as the rot in the Forex scam deepens. What started off at Bank of Baroda has now engulfed 7 more banks. The Directorate has arrested an individual by the name of Manish Jain. Here's the modus operandi in one case involving the Oriental Bank of Commerce, which has been unearthed by the ED today. Jain, one of the accused, has been accused of creating 66 fake accounts and transferring 505 crore rupees overseas using 11 bogus firms. The money was routed to HSBC Bank branches in Hong Kong and China, claiming false export and import invoices. Earlier, Nantara had caught up with the Finance Minister, who expressed his concern about the scam. RBI Deputy Governor S.S. Mundra has also said that the Reserve Bank as well as banks will now have to improve their surveillance. Listen in.
It is some people, unscrupulous people, who have managed to beat the system. They've beaten the system by making sure it's not that a large amount of money itself is deposited in cash. It's the same amount which could have been rotated again and again. But the fact that this has been done either with the object of achieving an unlawful gain in terms of duty drawbacks or some such activity, that will depend on the nature of investigation. Now you have the CBI investigating, you have the ED investigating, you have the SFIO investigating, you have the tax people looking into it. So once these reports, the investigative agencies form a prima facie opinion, I think it's only then the magnitude, the nature and the kind of people involved in it, I think will absolutely become clear.
Whatever was happening was detected by the internal system only, bank's own internal system. But the detection had been with a lag. You know, by the time it comes, substantial time has already passed. So it clearly gives an indication that there has to be a surveillance system which is much more real time and which is much more robust. All the enabling regulations are in place, but the things happen when people find a way of short-circuiting those regulations, and the system, vigilance system, is unable to detect them.
Well, that's the Reserve Bank Deputy Governor as well as the Finance Minister commenting on the Forex scam, which is clearly getting bigger by the day. Ashish Mehrishi joins us now with the details. Ashish, this is now spreading. There are public sector banks involved, private sector banks involved, and the Enforcement Directorate seems to suggest that perhaps we could see the involvement of many more banks as well.
Well, very true. This is something, it looks like an eye-opener, because everybody was expecting that this scam might actually be limited only up to Bank of Baroda. But now Enforcement Directorate has found another big scam which involves Oriental Bank of Commerce and Axis Bank, and many more banks looks to be involved into the entire scam. Now, what information we have been able to gather from Enforcement Directorate is that there's a person called Manish Jain who has already been arrested by Enforcement Directorate. He was arrested from Noida. He used to use the branch of Ghaziabad of Oriental Bank of Commerce as well as Axis Bank, and he has transferred more than 550 crore rupees to Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, that is HSBC Bank in Hong Kong, and further then he used to send this money to China. Now, more importantly, what we've seen, that modus operandi which we have seen in the Bank of Baroda scam, which is fake imports and exports to gather duty drawback, it looks like the modus operandi in this scam as well is almost similar, because the Oriental Bank of Commerce as well as Axis Bank accounts have been found fake. Huge amount of cash was infused in these accounts. The companies were fake, and ultimately the money was being sent abroad by fake imports and fake exports, where there was no product being exported or imported in India. So certainly this is a big scam. One person has already been arrested in this scam, which involves Oriental Bank of Commerce as well as Axis Bank. Not only this, we've already seen 4 people being arrested by ED. Earlier in the Bank of Baroda scam, 1 HDFC employee has been arrested. Then 2 people have been arrested by the CBI. And now, as investigations move further, it is likely that more skeletons will tumble out of the closet, for the reason because Enforcement Directorate sources revealed that it is only one chain in the Bank of Baroda scam which has been broken till now. There are 4 to 5 more chains. They have been able to gather transactions up to 850 crores. There are transactions which are likely to be anything between 3,500 and 5,000 crores. So the investigation is going to certainly spread, and in days to come, we can expect more people being arrested.
Thanks for joining us with that story, Ashish. Certainly getting murkier. Let's talk a little bit more about that modus operandi. This involves, it seems, forged documents, fictitious companies, and raising false import and export invoices to transfer foreign exchange out of India. Sapna Das says, to add insult to the injury, duty drawback was also claimed against the false export invoices, while Forex was transferred outside the country as an advanced remittance for imports. Sapna Das brings you details of the modus operandi.
The Forex scam, which was unearthed at Bank of Baroda, is sending shockwaves through the banking system. So far, the ED and CBI have already made arrests involving various officials of the Bank of Baroda and also at HDFC Bank. In the meanwhile, in its latest bust, the Enforcement Directorate has cracked down on illegal transfer of funds on the basis of forged import documents involving the Oriental Bank of Commerce, where 505 crores were deposited and remitted abroad between 2006 to 2010. The misuse of 7 more banks during the period of 2010 to 2014 has also surfaced, and these banks include ING Vaishya Bank, ICICI Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, IndusInd Bank, Dhanlaxmi Bank, Yes Bank and DCB. The Enforcement Directorate says forex to the tune of 557 crores has been sent out of India from 11 bogus firms under the garb of imports. The unaccounted funds have been transferred out using fake identities, forged documents and operation of various fictitious firms. The modus operandi points to deep connivance of bank officials and probably custom officials as well. For instance, in the Bank of Baroda case, a massive 59 current bank accounts were opened over a period of May 2014 to June 2015. These accounts were used for outward foreign remittance transactions totaling over 3,672 crores. The accounts were used for advanced remittance for imports to about 418 overseas parties, mainly based in Hong Kong. Less than 10% of the amount was deposited in these accounts as cash, while balance 90% was received through RTGS or NEFT, leaving a clear trail of transactions which the investigative agencies are now probing. If this was not enough, false export invoices were also raised and large amounts of duty drawback were claimed. ED sources now say they expect more skeletons to tumble out of the closets of many more banks. In New Delhi with Shireen Bhan, Sapna Das.
Well, joining us now to talk about this is Pradeep Chaudhary, former chairman of the State Bank of India. Mr. Chaudhary, appreciate you joining us. Now it is not just a case of Bank of Baroda. It has gone beyond that. It involves private sector banks, public sector banks. In just one case, we're talking about 500 crores. It's about 5,000 crores when we talk about Bank of Baroda. And the Enforcement Directorate clearly says that perhaps we will see more banks getting involved. Are you even surprised by what we've seen being unraveled so far by the investigative agencies?
No, I think rather than getting carried away by the rhetoric, we should split it up into 3 issues. Bank of Baroda, perhaps, based on the information available, is guilty of wrongful remittance of foreign. When there is no transaction, when there are no invoices that have come, when there are no, documents that have come, they shouldn't have sent advance remittances except with active. The second thing is opening of accounts, but this is very characteristic that it's all private sector banks which are involved in supposing, opening this kind of accounts. Because such is the urgency and such is the pressure on them to show performance, they open all kinds of accounts. And these cases have come to light. There are hundreds of such cases where, people with fake identities have opened the account, encash checks, and when I was SBI chairman, we lost.
Unfortunately, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, sir. We now have you. Now have you on a better line. Go ahead, sir.
But it reached a dead end. Nobody took it seriously. Next question is of getting duty drawbacks on forged invoices. That is something very different. And that cannot happen because the customs authorities are the business.
Yeah.
So that cannot happen by the banks alone.
No, you're absolutely right, Mr. Chaudhary. It is very symptomatic, or does clearly seem to suggest the connivance of customs officials as well. But unfortunately, we've got you on a bad line, sir. We seem to be losing you. We will try and connect with you when we have a better line so that there is more clarity. But speaking of bad lines, let's move to the big story of the day. This is the other story that broke right here on CNBC TV 18. The telecom regulator has cracked the whip. Consumers like you and me will be compensated for call drops. The regulator has asked telecom operators to bear a financial burden for any drop. And here's what the finance minister told us earlier today about his meeting with the Vodafone CEO Vittorio Colau, who he met yesterday. Also listening to Sunil Bharti Mittal reacting to the possibility of telecom companies being penalized for call drops. Listen in to what they have to say.
A good meeting with Mr. Vittorio Colau. He's made commitments to India.
I think so. They discussed their business plans in India. We also made our suggestions with regard to the telecom, particularly with regard to the quality of service which needs to be improved in India.
There has been a debate. The way I see it is there has been a debate in India which has been prompted by customers who are not happy, and I think this is positive because through the debate you find the solutions. And again, as I said, solutions have to cover all the aspects, have to cover the spectrum, have to cover the sites, the access to sites, the right of ways, all the elements that allow at the end to respect the laws of physics. And the laws of physics are that a certain density and a certain amount of spectrum can be utilized only up to a certain point. And so that's what we are working on. Which operator would like to give a bad service to its own customers? Which leading operator would like to do that between us, Airtel and the others? So again, the problem is not will. There's a lot of issues that have to be sorted out, and we are sorting them out. But to your question is, I haven't seen this anywhere in the world.
The whole industry is focused on managing the call drop issue. I think it is a serious issue. We cannot not take responsibility, and I have also assured the telecom minister, the regulator, that we are doing everything possible. I'm personally monitoring it. I can tell you, Bombay is now in reasonably great shape. Delhi is moving into that direction day by day. Some parts of Latin Delhi, we are still struggling. The government has come out with the policy of giving us more towers in the government buildings, and you will see some changes.
Well, those are the two big operators, the incumbents Vodafone and Sunil Bharti Mittal of Bharti Airtel, saying that penalizing telecom companies is perhaps not the way forward. Joining us now to talk about the issue of call drops is Rajan Matthew, Director General of Cellular Operators Association of India. Also with us is our colleague Prerna Barua. Rajan Matthew, I'll come to you in just 30 seconds. Prerna, very quickly, if you can wrap up for us what the audit report of the TRAI today says and what we can expect by way of the order tomorrow.
Several notifications that came in today from the telecom regulator. The regulator has, imposed that financial disincentives with regards to the quality of service norms be paid by the telecom regulator. The TRAI has said that up to 1 lakh rupees would be imposed on the telecom company in the first instance, and on subsequent violations, a penalty up to 2 lakh rupees would be imposed. And also the TRAI, has released the findings from its audit report. It had conducted several, drive tests as regards to the call drop issue is concerned. It has said that the outcome was very dismal and that there were no improvements by the telecom operators here in the country. And of course, as regards to the compensation to customers is concerned, we are expecting, that order from the TRAI sometime tomorrow. And this, of course, will be, will hit the telecom operators who has been saying that the key issue for call drops is primarily due to scarcity of spectrum, and also that they are the challenges that they face as regards to installation of towers here due to radiation issues. While the government has been saying, the DOT has been saying that the issue of call drops is primarily because of no investments on network infrastructure by the telecom operators. So this has become a heated debate in the last few months. So as regards to the customers to be compensated is concerned, we will expect this from the TRAI, the order which is likely to be coming up by tomorrow. But of course, for telcos on their compensation, this is what the TRAI has said, up to 1 lakh rupees would be imposed on the telecom companies if the QoS norms are not met by them. Back to you.
All right, thanks very much, Prerna. Rajan Matthew, It's clear now, the government is not buying your argument anymore. Whether you talk to the finance minister or the telecom minister, they're absolutely clear. You've made a ruse about this business of spectrum shortage. There is no issue as far as spectrum shortage is concerned. The telecom companies have failed to invest in network expansion. It's your problem, it's not ours. The government has made it absolutely clear.
Shireen, good to be on your show again. Hopefully this call is crystal clear. So let me say this first of all. We own the problem, we will fix the problem, and we are focused on the problem. So we're not running away from taking responsibility for the particular issue at hand. But let me just say this. Look at the amount of investments that have come in the last couple of quarters. One of the largest sectors requiring FDI and that has brought in foreign investments is the telecom sector. We've gone from approximately $2 billion US dollars to close to $7 to $8 billion US dollars. To say that we are not bringing in the investments, I don't think is particularly accurate. We've made the commitment and we are going to do so. So we are, after bidding over 1,000 crore rupees for spectrum, would you think we would hesitate to invest in the towers and in the infrastructure which is going to bring us the revenue? I don't think that's a cogent argument, Sharon.
But that's the argument that the government is making, Rajan Matthew. We've had the finance minister say this, we've had the telecom minister say it, but let's not go down that road. The question now is, the telecom operators had said that we need a better cellular tower policy in place. You've been going back and forth with the telecom minister. So far, we've seen no forward movement. The latest audit report put out by the regulator seems to suggest that satisfactory levels are as abysmal as they were when you started those conversations with the telecom minister. So finally, the regulator saying, I have no choice but to penalize you. How do you respond to that?
So, first of all, to say that there has been no improvement, I don't think goes in the face of the actual information. We have been providing on a weekly basis statistics to the DOT that shows that there has been definitive improvements in our networks and in the quality of service and in the call drops. So what the TRAI has done is do it on a drive test basis, which is like going to Mumbai and Delhi, picking the busiest streets at the busiest hours and says we have a problem. I don't think that's completely accurate. We have a problem. Let's focus on that. And what do we want to do? If you say that penalizing the operator, which is one of the proposals, is going to solve your problem, invariably that gets into the courts, because the courts ultimately will ask the question, is
that where this is headed, Rajan Matthew? Let's get things very clear. Is that where this matter is now headed to the courts? Because it seems pretty certain that the TRAI is going to issue an order, perhaps as early as tomorrow, saying that you will have to be penalized and you will have to compensate for call drops. So is this now headed to the courts?
So, Shireen, let's just make sure that we understand the issue. One, there is a penalty that's been imposed on the operator. The second is a series of steps supposed to compensate the consumer. This particular issue of going from 1 lakh to 1.5 lakhs, we'll take a close look at it. That's a quality of service issue. Yes, we are responsible. That's been in place. The amounts have gone up. The critical issue that we are looking for, which is more onerous, is the proposed compensation to be provided to the consumer. We believe that that is inappropriate and counterproductive, and so we'll have to wait tomorrow till those guidelines come out, and then we'll take a look at it and see, well, can we comply? If it is technologically and technically infeasible to comply, I'm not sure we have an option but to ask somebody to give us relief.
All right, so this matter looks fairly certain that it's headed to the courts. But Rajan Matthew, I have to say I feel some of your pain, but thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18.
Hopefully this call was clear, Sharon.
This call is clear. This call is clear, fortunately for you. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. Well, the big exclusive this evening, this is the time for growth, and the government will spend additional resources to stimulate it further. That's the categorical statement coming in from the finance minister. For the first time, he did admit that the government could fall short of its 69,000 crore rupee disinvestment target. For the first time, he also hinted at a piecemeal approach to solve the power discom debt crisis, which essentially means that perhaps in phase 1, we could see the government address 4 state governments or 4 discoms of 4 states, that's Tamil Nadu, UP, Rajasthan and Haryana, and then look at the next 4. The finance minister has also dismissed concerns over tax collections. He in fact says he expects indirect taxes to beat estimates. Take a look.
You see, even when the process of calculating or projecting future growth in this country under the new series is gaining majority, I think the most authentic data is the revenue collection. Revenue collection is real. There is no question of calculation or any calculation, opinion or lapses. Now the fact that indirect tax revenue is going up and going up quite reasonably well, I think our macroeconomic parameters are under control. Direct tax revenue also has started moving up. And the likelihood of falling short in terms of revenue, if at all, is going to be very marginal. In fact, in indirect tax collection, the projected growth is more than expected. So we are going to go beyond the target. Now, if that is the position, it comprises of excise, customs duty and service tax. So if excise collections go up, and I'm not taking the additional revenue measures into consideration, I'm just taking on year-on-year basis. If excise goes up, that means manufacturing is increasing. If customs goes up, that means raw material and capital goods are coming into the country, which is a good sign for the future. And if service tax goes up, that means the services are expanding. So these three are good parameters. So I am anticipating a good rate of growth. We probably will cross last year's figure. And compared to what's happening in the rest of the world, it's going to be very significantly higher.
Discoms I wanted to talk to you about, because Mr. Piyush Goyal has said that they've virtually sealed a deal with the states. By when can we see that being rolled out? And is hiking the FRBM limit enough? What can the centre do?
You see, the states have to take a decision in this. You can't borrow from banks in order to subsidize the consumers, because somebody has to pay the banks. Either the taxpayer pays or the consumers pay. And it's only obvious that we must get Indian consumers into the habit for paying for the services that they use. Unless the users pay, any kind of facilities won't develop. And therefore, Mr. Piyush Goyal, the Power Minister, is working in that direction with the states, so that slowly the defaulting states at least can start recovering more from their consumers and start paying the banks. Now, the time limit will depend on how quickly they enter into and seal the deal with the states. But I see no option.
Lots of Bihar elections.
No, but Bihar is not one of those states which is affected. You see, first of all, it's Uttar Pradesh, it's Rajasthan, it's Haryana and Tamil Nadu. These are the first four states. And then there are a few other states which have to take a decision. But then, obviously, the states will have to assume that it is their responsibility, even though the DISCOM may be a separate legal entity, it's not very far distinct as far as from the state is concerned. It's not a private company.
So no timeline as yet when that could go to cabinet. And is hiking FRBM limit enough as well?
No, you see, at least it becomes a part of the sovereign state debt in that event. And once that happens, then the state has to be concerned about the repayment itself.
After 8 years, we have seen a fiscal surplus. Are you going to, 3.9% is your target for the fiscal deficit. Will you spend more? It certainly looks like you may have to increase your spending to meet 3.9% and actually not fall to 3.8, etc.
You see, my first priority is going to be to spend this money. Spending will lead to economic activity will lead to growth. This is a time when we need growth. Bringing it down from 4 to 3.9% is not a serious challenge. We'll comfortably be able to do it. But whatever surplus we get or whatever resources we get, I think we'll try and spend them.
And disinvestment, it has not kept up the momentum for obvious reasons, but the fact is 69,000.
The disinvestment, we had a very high target. The only challenge in disinvestment is that there are a large number of metal companies, and this may not be the right time for metal companies.
So you will have that deficit to take care of then?
Now we'll try and see how the deficit can be met.
There's no plan B. And the strategic hotel sale, that hasn't happened.
You see, disinvestment department is working hard. They've come out with several issues. There is still half a year to go.
Finance Minister speaking on a whole host of issues. Let's revisit the telecom space. It's a massive breather for telcos like Bharti Airtel and Vodafone, as well as the former Avtar Hutchison and also the former Telecom Secretary Shamal Ghosh. The 2G Special Court has discharged all charges that were levied against these accused in an additional spectrum case which goes back to 2002. The court has also slammed the CBI for fabricating the charge sheet and ordered action against those probing the case. CNBC TV 18 caught up with the former Telecom Secretary Shamal Ghosh post the verdict, and we also got Finance Minister Arun Jaitley's views on this acquittal.
It is a landmark judgment, and it again reposes faith in our judicial system. They have been extremely fair, gone on the facts of the case and not on certain things which are not covered by the facts of the case. And I'm extremely happy that my faith in the judicial system has been reposed.
I'm extremely glad that the special judge has vindicated a very honest officer who must have faced a lot of harassment. In fact, I had consistently maintained even at that time that the prosecution was politically motivated. It was for extraneous reasons, and I'm glad that the judge today has said that it is for extraneous considerations.
Well, that's the Finance Minister commenting on the relief provided by the 2G Special Court to the former DOT Secretary Shamal Ghosh as well as companies like Bharti Airtel. Speaking of relief, the government has also got some from the Supreme Court today. The Apex Court has expanded the ambit of the unique ID card, that's Aadhaar. It can now be voluntarily used for the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, Jan Dhan Yojana and pension schemes, but this will continue to be only voluntary. The Supreme Court has warned the government that Aadhaar cannot be made mandatory and no one should be deprived of services for not having the card. The modification of the court's earlier order comes after 5 regulators and few state governments sought clarity. And sticking with the courts, Nestle India has decided to relent to the government's demand of carrying out fresh tests on all the Maggi noodle samples seized by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. The National Consumer Commission, which was hearing the case, has asked the government to send all 9 varieties of the instant noodles to a lab based out of Mysore to ascertain the lead and MSG contents as well. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will decide on the challenge against the National Judicial Appointment Commission. The NJAC seeks to replace the collegium system of selecting judges to the higher judiciary. Ashmit joins us now with the details. Ashmit, this has been a big battle, executive versus judiciary. It is going to be a landmark judgment.
Indeed, it is going to be a landmark judgment with the collegium system having been in place for 20 years and NJAC being envisioned as an alternative. Of course, the NJAC, the reason it assumes significance is because this is the first such alternative having been seen to the collegium system. The government envisioned an NJAC which would have 6 members, the Chief Justice of India, 2 senior-most judges, but here's the interesting bit. It would also have the Law Minister and 2 eminent persons who in turn would be appointed by the Prime Minister, the Leader of Opposition, as well as the Chief Justice of India, and thereby the bogey of the executive is raised, and hence the questions on judicial independence, which incidentally was also the question raised by various PRs that were filed before the Apex Court. This was the fundamental question that the NJAC, by altering the way the judges are selected, affects the way, compromises judicial independence. That was the question. The government, of course, rebutted these claims, arguing that the current system, the collegium system, is extremely opaque, that there is a need for more transparency. The government also did not shy away from pointing fingers at quote-unquote bad judges that the collegium system has thrown up, and made a case for strengthening judicial independence by way of involving the NJAC. And what's interesting here is that the Chief Justice of India as of now has recused himself from the NJAC. So as of now, neither do we have the collegium system, nor do we have the NJAC. So which brings us to the possibilities tomorrow. Now, of course, risking entering into the domain of speculation and conjecture, there are 3 broad possibilities. One, of course, that the government stand is vindicated, that the NJAC is upheld, and then we have a statutory body for appointing judges. That's the first possibility. The second, of course, is the more interesting one, where the PILs are in fact upheld, the contentions as far as judicial independence are upheld, which would raise the question that if the NJAC is shown the door, does that mean that we go back to the collegium system? That's another question that would need answering. The third and the final possibility is perhaps that an 11-judge bench, and even larger bench, is constituted to dwell on this question of the NJAC. So clearly, all 3 possibilities will be considered, and of course, we'll have more clarity only by tomorrow morning.
It is going to be a busy day for you, Ashwin. Thanks very much for joining us in what is going to be a landmark judgment by the Apex Court. Could change the face of the judiciary. It's also a crucial day for former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. A special court is likely to pronounce its verdict on the plea of former Jharkhand Chief Minister Madhu Koda's plea seeking the summoning of the former Prime Minister as an additional accused in the coal block allocation scam. But it's a fresh lease of life for the Adani Group's coal business down under. The Australian government today gave environmental clearance to Adani Enterprises' $10 billion Carmichael coal mine and rail project. The move paves the way for mining, albeit with strict riders. Naveen Shetty and Alex Shetty bring you the report.
It's relief at long last for the Adani Group. Almost 2 months after an Australian court cancelled the environment approval for its Carmichael coal mine, the company has passed the Australian government's repeat scrutiny and gained the crucial environmental clearance. The approval, which will allow Adani to develop open-cut and underground mines, leading to an annual production of 60 million tonnes of coal, comes with 36 stringent conditions. The project will also require construction of 189 kilometres of rail network to evacuate the mined coal.
Well, yes, I can confirm that the federal government has given its approval to the Carmichael coal mine in Queensland. The minister has now reissued reasons, close to 110 pages of reasons for the approval, where he goes through the various bases and for his reasoning for approving the mine with strict conditions.
The project is spread across 20,237 hectares and will be reviewed for environmental impact every 5 years. One of the key conditions that comes with the approval includes protection of 37,000 hectares of land covering 3 different natural habitats. The company will also have to spend 10 million Australian dollars per year over a period of 10 years to protect threatened species in Galilee Basin.
There may be question marks around the climate change considerations. This is a mine which will impact on World Heritage Area, in particular the Great Barrier Reef, and we're certainly looking very closely at that aspect.
The Environment Assessment Report says the project will not have any significant impact on the Great Barrier Reef. Once operational, the mine is expected to generate 20,000 jobs, and the Australian government could earn a whopping 22 billion Australian dollars in taxes and royalties from the project over the next 35 years. In Mumbai, with Naveen Shetty, Alexander Matthew.
That's the Adani Group finally getting the green signal.
The stock higher by 14% today.
But time for a short break here on India Business Hour. On the other side, the dominoes won't just stop falling for Volkswagen. Stay tuned to find out what's the latest in the scandal.